Okay, so we got some really cool news from NASCAR. I was just reading this earlier this morning. This is actually a really cool one. I figured this is something we could talk about. Roush Fenway becomes the first carbon neutral NASCAR team, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But let me just go over exactly what they're trying to do. They're setting a goal to reduce its carbon footprint, even as it raced a pair of gas guzzling cars all across the country. So I guess what they're trying to do is reduce the amount of gas guzzling cars that they use in races, something that we do in society. A lot of electric cars like Tesla and Porsche's coming out with an electric car. All these types of things to reduce um I forgot what they call it. Letting gases in the air. I can't really think about the word right this second. The
Like
initiative started
pollution.
with a small environmentally conscious measures that eventually grew into a company-wide initiative with support from partner Castro. RFR becomes the first carbon neutral team in NASCAR. And the team will mark the achievement Sunday at Daytona International Speedway with a special paint scheme on Ryan Newman's car. The Ford is typically a dominant green with red accents when Castro sponsors the number 6 car, which I'm pretty sure is the one Ryan Newman drives. And how they're going to make this work is to become carbon neutral. RFR set a goal to recycle 90% of every race car, including oil, rubber, aluminum, and carbon fiber, which I think is really cool. Actually, they're actually racing around with not electric cars, recycled cars. Excuse me. The organization has reduced its overall waste produced by more than 100 tons over the last decade. Switched to LED lighting throughout its campus, reduced energy-consuming costs through computer-controlled HVAC systems, and installed reflective roofing membranes to reduce solar heat gain. And this was reported by ESPN. The source is called AP. I don't know what that is. So, Mario, let me start with you first. This is actually a really interesting topic, in my opinion. So I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, well, first is the AP. It stands for Associated Press, so it's
Okay.
ESPN Associated Press. They just initialize it for whatever reason it is. Yeah, I mean, we're moving into a very technological age. Every single year, every single day, there's always more advancements in technology being made. I feel like obviously we live in the 21st century, and that's been happening. Technology is going to evolve over time, and so I mean, it's not really shocking that it's happened. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously this Tesla and obviously since Joe Biden has came into presidency, he's talking about building doing more using more electric wise, more technology wise, so like electrical cars opposed to gas. So obviously this was going to come sooner or later. Question is they gotta really test this out. Obviously, and then because this is a NASCAR company, I expect them to test it out in the best, most professional way possible. Making sure the car is safe. That's the number one priority in my opinion, because you want your racer to be safe. You don't want to put them in a dangerous car. Making sure that it has enough to run for the whole race, whatever that race might be, which it should. Honestly, like I mean, I got my pros and cons for like techno. Like me personally, I have my cons for my pros and cons for electric cars. Like they got some pros and they got some cons. But as for NASCAR, I mean, I think this is a great idea. You know what I'm saying? I think this is a great idea for NASCAR because like NASCAR, as long as the car that they drive can run long enough to go can run long enough to kind of, how am I supposed to explain it? As long as this car can run long enough for the entire race, I got no problem with it. But here's the one tiny problem I have. What's the one thing in NASCAR? What's probably the most crucial thing in NASCAR, Nate? When you're not racing that car, when you're during a race and you're not racing that car, it's the pit stop. So it kind of gives them a lot more of an advantage driving an electrical car because it doesn't need to go to those pit stops. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't need to go refuel on gas. It doesn't need to. You don't really need to, like. You might need to change the tires, but like again, you're getting in and out of the pit stop in less time, which that might be the only problem for me. I feel like it's not a fair advantage. Also, if if they decide not to charge the car, because remember, electrical cars, they need charging. You got to charge them. So if they're not charging the car long enough for an entire race, then that pit stop, they might have to go in there and charge the car. Personally, I got no problem with it, but I can definitely see some problems being involved in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I mean, if they are able to handle this in the most professional way and create a way where it doesn't seem like regular NASCARs are getting less of an advantage, then I'm all for it. But it's going to be very, very hard. But because this is NASCAR, I expect them to handle it correctly.
Right, right. And by the way, the word I was looking for before was pollution. That was the word. I just had a brain fart. Yeah, man. I mean, I think this is a really great idea. I mean, in a world where we're moving into electric cars now, there's obviously other things like hybrid cars and hydrogen cars. Yes, that exist. It's really cool to see that NASCAR is moving into that trend as well. Joe Biden wants to move to all electric cars by 2034, which I don't know how that's gonna work, but whatever. And honestly, I'm not surprised that NASCAR is doing it because when you really think about it, there's a lot of horsepower there, and I know a lot about my cars. There's a lot of horsepower that goes into one of those cars. Let me take for reference, all right? You all know your cars, you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna take a reference to Dodge Charger Hellcat right now, a red eye, 797 horsepower. You know how much gas that thing takes? An average 12 miles per gallon. That's a lot of gas. And that's a lot of gas going into the air and polluting the air and all that. You know what I mean? That's a lot of gas. And all these NASCAR and all these race cars that they drive have that much horsepower. Not 800 horsepower, but they still have a big figure. So with that big figure of power under the hood comes a lot of gas coming out that car. So not only are you gas guzzling, like the article said, but you're putting all this, pollutant in the air and all that. And that's not good. And I do like how NASCAR is kind of starting to put the trend of electric cars, into the world of NASCAR. Tesla takes over the world. GM's starting to make a lot of electric cars. Like I said, Porsche made a new electric car. There's a lot of brands starting to come into that trend, and now NASCAR is in that's a big deal. Um, and going back to your thing with the problems, which I completely agree with that. But I see it like this, all right? I feel like in order for this to work in the best way possible in the future, there needs to be problems. And here's why I say that. All right, I know that sounds really silly, but here's why I say this. Because when there's problems, you go back to the drawing board, right? Like whenever a team loses a game, go back to the drawing board and you figure out, all right, that strategy didn't work. Now we just gotta make another one. Same deal here. That doesn't work. All right, back to the drawing board. What can we do better? What can be more efficient? What can be more reliable? You know what I mean? So I think in this situation, I think problems. I hope not deadly problems. I'm not sure right now. But I'm talking like you know problems technologically. I feel like that needs to happen because obviously when you release something, there's gonna be an error. Not everything's perfect, and that's why a lot of these recalls with cars and trucks happen these days, and they go back to the drawing board and they fix them. So I feel like in this case, I think I know it sounds silly, but it needs to happen in order for them to make it the best efficient thing possible. Because you're not gonna come out with the best, most efficient way possible in the beginning. That's a little bit of a stretch. So I mean, I think that needs to happen. Um, as for the battery thing, yeah, you gotta charge the car. They're not being filled with gas. My question though is, will the battery last long enough? I know like with the gas cars, they have to come in and pit stop and refill. But that's my question with the battery. Is it gonna be more efficient than the gas, or is it gonna be less efficient? Feel me? Like that's something that I question. I'm sure they'll have that figured out. I mean, it's 2021. I'm sure they have that technological part figured out. Well, with that said, man, I give kudos to NASCAR and Roush Fenway. And I wish them the best of luck with this. I know this is a very difficult, very technological thing to do, especially in the world of NASCAR. But I wish them the best of luck with it regardless, and go racing.